Hey everybody, it's Brian Zane here with my review of AEW Dynamite New Year's Smash Edition, December 29th, 2021. A lot of finals in this week. You get the final episode of the year, the final episode on TNT before it moves to TBS next week, and I guess, might as well get out of the way now, this is my final episode reviewing Dynamite on this channel for the time being. And I guess I can also add I choose to no longer review NXT 2.0 after this week either. That's my choice for the new year, is to start off not reviewing those shows. And I just want to say the reason I'm doing that is because I've reached this point now in my life and my career where if it feels like work, I don't want to do it anymore. And as much as I like these shows as a fan, to have to then watch them and be analytical about them and to have to put reviews out for them, for me, it kind of takes away from my enjoyment of these shows. And I kind of, for 2022, I guess if you want to call it a New Year's resolution, my plan is to take priority for myself and what I want to get out of my life and out of this channel. I want my weeknights back. I'm not going to lie. And I want to spend, like I said, more time doing the things I want to do for this channel that aren't necessarily just kind of like, you know, your standard weekly show reviews. I want to focus more on the things that you all want to see. I'm still going to review the pay-per-views and all that. I'm still going to keep abreast of the shows. For example, I'm still doing the Wednesday videos, the long forms, and the classic pay-per-view reviews. J Big still doing Raw and SmackDown reviews. We'll still be doing the podcast on Thursdays. And of course, I'll be putting other videos out as well. Mailbags, hopefully getting back into the kayfabe kitchen, that sort of thing. That's all planned out. And I'm not saying I'm never going to go back to reviewing these weekly shows again, but for right now, like I said, I'm going to refocus on myself for 2022 and my efforts and spend time doing the things I want to do for this channel and spend time with the people in my life I want to spend more time with. I hope you all understand that. I hope that you get your information about NXT and AEW from some other very excellent, other qualified YouTube channels who talk about this as well. I leave it unto them. And so it's been quite a run, just reviewing shows every week, it seems. For the last, 5 or 6 years, I've been doing this kind of aspect of the channel. But I'm going to embrace this change and embrace this departure, however long it may take. But it's been a lot of fun, and I'll get to more of the goodbyes and everything later. But I guess one thing I'll say before we go into the episode for this week, one more time, like what you like, don't be a dick. Let's begin. So yeah, anyway, New Year's Smash, final episode on TNT, back in Daly's place. And hey, Jim Ross back on commentary for the first time in several weeks. Of course, he took time off to get that radiation treatment for his skin cancer. He says he's now cancer-free. Congratulations. Way to go, Jim Ross. You love to see it. And he's here in fine form this evening for the opening match. It's a 10-man tag team match as Jurassic Express, Christian Cage, and the Lucha Brothers take on FTR and HFO. That's Matt Hardy and Private Party. I like the sequence here where Mark Quinn hits a Hurricane Rana on Jungle Boy and Matt catches him right away, hits the side effect in the middle of the ring. Lucha Brothers, smooth as silk as they get a nice run. And of course, Luchasaurus, like I've always said, one of the best hot tags in AEW and in the business, and he definitely lived up to that in this match as well. The story here, though, you've got this moment where Penta and Christian have a couple of disagreements, and this time it actually ends up costing them the match. Christian's hit with a big rig by FTR for the baddies to win here, and so I thought it was a nice hot opener. Everyone got their stuff in, building things up between Christian Cage and the Lucha Brothers, and we actually see a follow-up to this later in the show where Christian kind of speaks on behalf of Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus for a tag title match next week on TBS, and of course Penta and Phoenix accept that. A nice line by Abrahantes here in the back too, where he says to Jungle Boy that if you're the future, you might want to think about getting rid of the past, in reference to Christian Cage. So Christian speaking on behalf of Jurassic Express, like, is that going to lead to some kind of tension or divide between the two sides? Who really knows, or where the stuff with Penta and Christian will go? But I like what they're kind of setting up here. It's a lot of potential. Trios match up next as Eddie Kingston and Santana and Ortiz take on 2.0 and Daniel Garcia. The feud with Garcia and Kingston still underway here. The last time they were in the ring, Garcia actually had Kingston's number, grabbed grabbing the tights with a roll-up victory. And that's kind of the story we get here in this match as well. Match is okay, but what we see in the finish is you've got 2.0 grabbing and pulling the tights of Santana in the roll-up to win the match. So very similar outcome there. After the bell, the baddies are beaten down on Santana and Ortiz. Garcia with the ring bell, and he clatters Santana with it. Chris Jericho makes the save. They play his music twice, and he's got the bat and everything. And it's kind of an awkward moment here where he stands around and he just does the whole like look out to the crowd while they sing my song face that he does, while he's also like not tending to his partner, his friend from the inner circle, who's like been laid out and his brain splattered by this ring bell and everything. Eddie Kingston gets in his face about it. He said didn't want the help and everything. They're about to come to blows. Ortiz has to get in the middle of them, and that's where the segment ends. So again, they're kind of shooting off in a couple different directions here. You've got Kingston with his beef with Garcia and 2.0. Chris Jericho also has beef with these guys because the last time we saw him, they were beaten down by Garcia and 2.0. So now it's like Chris Jericho and Kingston might have something from this. Where's that going to fit in? Where will Jericho's friendship with Santana and Ortiz lie? And where does Kingston fit into all this? Very interesting couple of different stories we have crisscrossing here, and so I do appreciate that. We go backstage and hear from MJF, who's flanked by Wardlow and his accountability buddy, Shawn Spears, who now has a Burberry striped chair. I love that little touch there. So MJF calls Sting untrained for the way he was dumped out of the ring in kind of a scary fashion in that six-man tag last week. He also says CM Punk was running away from him all last week, which we all know the opposite was actually what happened there. He tells Wardlow, hey, you know, you got to pick up these wins to qualify for the Face the Revolution ladder match coming up. Oh, and by the way, when you do qualify, you have to give me your spot. And of course, Wardlow takes offense to that. In comes Smart Mark Sterling to read the contract that Wardlow has apparently signed, where he's basically an indentured servant. All of his winnings and everything in perpetuity go to MJF if he so pleases. So again, more of that seed planting. When that turn inevitably happens, hopefully in 2022, I think it's going to be a huge deal here. But we go to his matchup next as he takes on Colin Delaney, the ECW alum himself. Good to see him showing up here tonight, but he gets destroyed. 4 power bombs by Wardlow is all she wrote to win the match, and of course that's a whole point of contention where MJF and Shawn Spears tell him to stop grandstanding and a hot dogging with these extra power bombs. Let's get the job done. So that's basically the story there, continuing that, just more of that tension between Wardlow and Spears, Wardlow and MJF. It's been a very slow burn, but it feels like it's finally reaching this point where it's getting the most intense and consistent that it's been in a long time. We go backstage and see the Super Click and the newly reunited Red Dragon. Yes, they re-dragoned them. Last week, the big story was Kyle O'Reilly, fresh off his run on NXT, has debuted for AEW here, reunited with Bobby Fish. And now Adam Cole finds himself in a bit of a tricky situation here. Who's he going to ultimately side with? His friends in the Young Bucks or his friends in his past life, Fish and O'Reilly? And we get this moment here where O'Reilly wants to talk to Adam one-on-one and says, hey, you know, we've had heat, we've had our problems in the past, but this is AEW now, and the key to surviving and thriving in AEW is faction magic. So he says he knows Fish has his back in the trios match later tonight, but now he's going to find out if Cole has his back as well. I do like them acknowledging the past feud. It's kind of the elephant in the room. Like, everyone knows Adam Cole's last feud in NXT was against Kyle O'Reilly, and that was the whole big thing of 2020. So for them to not talk about it, I think would be intellectually dishonest, is the phrase that I can come up with off the top of my head right now. It would be very silly to try and ignore it. And so I think the way they went about it was pretty smart, acknowledging that and also having a good explanation as to why there still may be hope for them as a team. Like Kyle said, you got to work together, and you know, when we are working together, things are great. So we'll see how this plays out. So Dan Lambert came back to AEW recently. I must have missed the episode where he returned, but he's here in the ring now with the Men of the Year, cutting a promo. He talks about Cody Rhodes. There's nothing cool about him or his entourage. He says Arn Anderson used to be a horseman, but now he's just a whore. And then he says, speaking of whores, Brandy Rhodes. And the three of them go into this whole shtick about, oh, Brandy is like a whore, or she was a stripper. I had never met a girl named Brandy who wasn't a stripper, Lambert says. They go back to Cody and says that, you know, that neck tattoo is so dumb, even Mike Tyson thinks it looks stupid. He says the AEW fans may be idiots, but even an idiot can't stand the taste tasted the shit sandwich you're shoving down everybody's throats. It's a really confusing promo because Lambert is unabashedly a heel. He's healing on the fans, but he's also healing on Cody, which the fans appreciate because Cody is doing the delusional babyface thing. The fans are booing that right now. So they're like, yeah, Lambert, but you just called us idiots. So we're very conflicted about this. Then Brandi Rhodes butts in and she's put some bass in her voice. The fans don't like her either. And she's telling him that you're just a bobble-headed wannabe Paul Heyman. Lambert counters by saying, I prefer Jim Cornette. Brandi asks, when's the last time Lambert got beat up by a woman where he didn't have to pay for it? She wants to beat him up and he warns her that he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and she counters that, well, oh, you're a black belt. I happen to be a black bitch. And so they're about to throw down, apparently. Brandi's got the shoes off. Dustin Rhodes comes in to try and play peacekeeper, and then he gets jumped by Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page. The baddies scamper off, and that's that. This segment was cringe, just the whole thing. I mean, I've made my thoughts known on Dan Lambert. I think that he is effective in a sense, but I think kind of like Chris Jericho, he can't seem to talk about women without going to that year 2000 playbook of calling them hoes or sluts or strippers, which seems totally past the time and like no place for that anymore, I think, as we're approaching 2022. And as for Brandi Rhodes, I don't care for her stuff on the mic either, especially when she's trying to be all tough and like wants to beat somebody up. We get a package hyping up the rematch with Hangman Page and Bryan Danielson for next week, where there will be judges at ringside in the event that the match goes to a time limit draw. So that is an important kind of wrinkle in the story now here. On we go to the TBS Title Tournament semifinal match, Jade Cargill versus Thunder Rosa, who's sporting some Weapon X inspired attire this week. This match was kind of hard for me to get through. I feel like Jade had a lot of spots where you could just tell she was very clearly communicating something to Thunder before on the outside when they're fighting and everything. It's kind of a clunky match. It feels like they're on two different frequencies. Even the spot where Thunder Rosa is supposed to get cut off before the commercial break, it feels that's a botch and they have to kind of like adjust to that, which they do well enough, but I mean, it felt very noticeable at times where there's a lot of just like communication breakdowns. They're kind of waiting for their things to be synchronized. It just didn't work well for me here. But I mean, the story of Thunder working on Jade's leg was pretty good. Jade still had some moments of brilliance with her strength and whatnot. And then in the end, you got Mark Sterling getting on the apron to distract the referee. Suddenly, a masked, hooded lady shows up and bashes a beer bottle over Thunder Rosa's head. That allows Jade to win and go on to the finals for next week to face Ruby Soho for that to be the inaugural TBS champion. After the bell, there's more of a beatdown on Rosa. The woman unmasks herself to reveal Mercedes Martinez, who, is one of the many individuals who got the axe earlier this year from WWE. Of course, she did have a brief stint, one of the OG members of Retribution with Mia Yim and the rest before she quit that whole thing. So Mercedes, and then Ruby Soho chases off the baddies, and that's that. Mercedes coming back is a nice surprise. I think, she did have a one-off in AEW before she got signed to NXT in one of the women's battle royals, I believe. So it's good to see her back here. The women's division is getting kind of crowded, and I'm not saying, it's going to be an immediate improvement for her, but it can't be worse than what she was like at NXT in the developmental. So hopefully good things will come out of it. As far as the match itself goes, not the strongest performance by Thunder Rosa. Probably one of the best performances by Jade, but that still had its problems. So yeah, it should be interesting to see how Ruby Soho handles her next week in the finals. CM Punk comes out next for a promo, and they are very heavily promoting it's the first time ever in Daily's Place, which, okay, means more to y'all than it does to me. I think they're just playing really fast and loose with the justification for these first time ever moments of CM Punk. I feel like every week it's like, it's the first time ever CM Punk's gonna cut a promo in this building. For the first time ever, CM Punk's gonna have a tuna fish sandwich at this deli. Punk gives props to JR for coming back, and he also brings up Daily's Place and how it reminds him of his friend Brody Lee, and he mentions that it was the way that AEW treated Brody Lee's death that convinced him that this was a place worth coming to and signing to. He brings up and he says that anyone who tries to minimize the impact that Brody has had on the business and the people around him clearly had never met him. So there's some very pointed words to some individuals who I will not name here who really want to talk trash about Brody Lee this past week. And speaking of internet trolls, MJF. Punk with a nice segue. He says that MJF is a Twitter troll in the flesh, where he'll talk a big game, hides behind a keyboard or FTR in this case, but when the going gets tough, he will not fight him. Calls him a bigger waste of con money than Tim Tebow, which gets a very mixed reaction in the crowd. And I love how, after a couple beats, cuts this fan in the front row who's like, yeah, Yeah, like this kind of approving nod by one of these fans was just amazing. Punk wraps it up by saying that he and MJF are both in pursuit of championship gold. It's inevitable they're going to have to face each other at one point or another if they want to get there. And he says it'd be a shame if someone interfered with MJF's quest for gold. And that's where the promo ends. I thought it was pretty good. It got a lot of big reactions. Like he hit all the right points, I think, and just building up more of that confrontation with he and MJF. They each said their piece this week. God, when that match happens, I think it's going to be a big one. I can't pick right now who's going to win it, but I think that the build they're going to right now, the build's been very good for Punk and MJF. Get a few more promos in a row here. We get one backstage with Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs, where Ricky explains his actions costing Dante Martin the Dynamite Diamond Ring match a week or two ago, saying, well, you know, you turned your back on Team Taz, and that ruined all your chances for having a successful career in AEW. If I can't win the Diamond Ring, then you can't have anything. And then Powerhouse Hobbs wraps up the promo by saying, you know, do you really want to have a second round with me, Dante? Marinate on that for a bit. We see Sammy Guevara on stage showing his New Year's resolution with signs. And then we get a hype package for Hikaru Shida and Serena Deeb following their match from Winter is Coming. Shida calls out Deeb saying, you know, you say I cheated this and that. The only reason that you lost is from your own doing because you pulled off the pad, you ran into the turnbuckle. It's all your fault. But if you want a rematch, I accept. So she kind of accepts on Serena's behalf. So not the blow off, it seems. Maybe there's at least one more match coming down the pike with these two ladies, which should be great because their work has been good so far. Then we see Tony Schiavone in the ring with Brian Pillman Jr. He talks about, you know, last time he was here, you know, Griff Garrison got beat up by Malachi Black. The details of what happened in the aftermath are fuzzy to him, but he's very motivated to take on Black here. He says, you know, I didn't know my father, but if there's one thing I've learned from him in his life, you only get one. So he's going to be challenging Malachi Black to a match. I loved Pillman's passion and his voice in this promo here. The lights cut out after he calls out Malachi. Malachi teleports in, he takes off the mask and he points, teleports out. So we know that match is happening next week. Like I said, I'm definitely interested in this little, I guess, kind of a micro program with Malachi and the Varsity Blondes. He took out Griff Garrison. He will probably take out Brian Pillman Jr. next week. I'm wondering when we're going to see this new member of the House of Black that was alluded to a couple weeks ago in that ceremony. And still more promos. We have the Acclaimed cutting a promo on Sting and Darby Allin saying, hey, the main event tag team in AEW aren't even ranked in the rankings and whatever. And Anthony Bowen says he wants to beat up Darby Allin's My Chemical Romance looking ass on Rampage. And then we get a retort from Sting and Darbs. Darby says that all people have done is try to beat them, emphasis on try. He's ready for Bowens on Friday at Rampage. And then we get a hype package for Ty Conti and Anna Jay versus Penelope Ford and the Bunny, where they're like, you think you're so great with your black belt and your kicks. And so they're going to have a street fight on Rampage as well. This angle feels like it's been going on a very long time, and this feels like it could be a blow-off. And then finally, it's time for the main event trios match as the Best Friends take on Adam Cole and Red Dragon. And looking at that visual, seeing them all together, it's amazing how in less than a year, the Undisputed Era went from being a cornerstone of NXT and like the nucleus around which everything revolved, and now they're being reunited in AEW. How did WWE drop the ball on all three of these guys? It's a good match here. It's what you come to expect from these six particular guys. Just phenomenal talent that get to shine here. On the ramp, Chuck Taylor, he's able to counter a Panama Sunrise attempt by Cole into a backdrop, and he planches onto Fish and O'Reilly as well. Cole gets hit with two pile drivers in a row, then the beach break, pin's broken up. Near the end, Kyle accidentally kicks Cole off the apron. Brandon Cutler runs in, distracts the referee. The Young Bucks come in, and they help the baddies win this matchup here. You've got Chasing the Dragon on Chuck E.T. for Red Dragon and Cole to win the match, and the Young Bucks and Cutler are tending to Cole still on the outside. Fish and O'Reilly are celebrating. There seems to be tension between these two sides as we go off the air. So not officially reunited yet, and they're not all buddies, they're not all friends. Still kind of tension between Kyle and Cole. They're keeping that alive, and like I said, you kind of got to. After the blow-off they had in NXT, again, it would be very silly if they completely faved it. And so to acknowledge it and to have this be kind of a sticking point in their relationship as Kyle is back together with them, like, I think that makes for a good story. My grade for the New Year's Smash edition of AEW Dynamite is a C+. This show, felt like a calm before a storm here. I guess for a final farewell to TNT, didn't feel like that big a deal, but I guess maybe you're asking too much because they are laying a lot of groundwork and doing a lot of storytelling and building toward what is going to be their much bigger episode on TBS next week, where they're really, pulling out all the big guns and everything. I like the quasi-continuation of Cole and O'Reilly. Like I said, I think they're doing a very good job with that. Probably the most compelling thing about the show this week. And I gotta say, as far as next week's show goes, it looks stellar. I cannot wait to watch it, though, with my pundit brain turned off. So this is not the last video of the year I'm putting out. There will be a day one predictions video with myself and Jay Biggs, but as long as this is the last video of just myself for the year, I want to use this opportunity to tell you folks watching, thank you. Thank you all very much for your fandom, for your support, for you subscribing to the channel, those who have mailed me stuff in the mailbags, the ones who've reached out to me on social media and interact with me and stuff. Your support means the world to me, and I couldn't have gotten anywhere as far as I've gotten with this channel without your support. Whether it's this year, whether it's the previous 7.5 years before that I've been doing this channel, couldn't have done it without the support of my viewers. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I cannot thank you enough for that. And I appreciate your patience and your understanding as I choose to walk away from NXT and Dynamite reviews. Again, for the time being, no promises they're going away entirely. We'll just have to wait and see how it goes and how I feel. But like I said, as I refocus on myself and this channel for 2022, I really am optimistic for how things are going to turn out next year, and I cannot wait to have you all join me on that ride. But folks, until then, I'm Brian Zane. Have a very happy new year. I'll see you next time.